Hello, you're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs, where the concept is I speak to bands and band members about what they've got up to between going on tours, between making records. And on today's episode is Richard Colburn from Belle and Sebastian. He joined me to talk about early years, now years, and some brilliant stories in between, including how you might find some rare relics of their first album, Tigermilk, on a rooftop in Glasgow. Their 10th album, A Bit of Previous, is out on the 6th of May, and for the rest of the year, they're touring all over the world, including a UK tour in November, where they've got 2 nights at the Roundhouse. So here's Richard Colburn, drummer of Belle and Sebastian, on 101 Part-Time Jobs. Cheers for listening.
We're together at the hip, stuck together at the lip.
We're slightly different in as much as most bands have known each other probably prior to being in a band, whether it's local friends, neighbourhood friends or school friends or whatever. Pretty much all of us didn't know each other, and we had such an age range of, I think, from oldest to youngest was probably 11 years, and everything in between. So basically, Stuart had tried to put a band together for years prior to the lineup that we had for the first few albums, and he always advertised in supermarkets and so on, and he could never get the people that he wanted. So he thought, well, I'm just going to let people come to me. So over a period of time in like 1995, we just kind of met each other randomly through parties and, gigs and different social events and so on. And we slowly became a band. But we didn't know each other beforehand, and we came from massively different backgrounds and everything. So we're kind of different in as much as I said before, most bands have, a previous relationship.
I mean, that must have had such a big impact in the way you communicated with each other. Because, when you're friends from school, you have your language, you've got your inside jokes, that really kind of comfortableness. And I wonder, when you've got a different age group, I feel like that might encourage you to kind of speak to each other a bit more objectively, maybe politely.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I think that's sort of been one of the plus points of it. Actually, is that directness and respect and politeness and so on and so forth. Where if there was a problem, it would be sorted out in quite an amicable way. Although you do get the odd. People rub against each other here and there, but on the whole, we've always managed to get through things without, too much drama. My family are all musicians, and my mother's side of the family had a music shop in Perth, which is the town I came from, which is about an hour from Glasgow. So I would always go up and sort of work part-time in there, and then just doing little side gigs and, whatever came up really to make ends meet. But it's funny because everybody in the band had different backgrounds, and some were studying and some were, like KPs and kitchens and stuff. My grandfather, he was like a sort of virtuoso accordionist, but he had the music shop and the whole family worked in the music shop. I actually rebelled against it, and I was going to be a professional snooker player.
No.
Yeah. And but I did duck in and out of music, here and there, but I didn't really, I don't know, I just wanted to rebel against it, I guess, because it was, so all-encompassing all the time. I did like it, I did enjoy it, but I just felt, I had to break away from it. So I got so far with snooker, and I think it must have been, early 20s perhaps, and I decided that I'm not putting 100% into this, it's not for me. What can I do that doesn't involve getting a job straight away? Go to college, and there was a sound engineering course, and I did that, and from there it just all sort of fell into place somehow.
Tell me about snooker. I mean, when did you get into it, and how did you find a club where you were part of a gang, a group that were getting good together? And how does one become a semi-professional snooker player?
Well, quite an early age actually. My grandparents' house in Perth, around the corner, there was like a snooker club or a snooker hall, I suppose, at that time. So that would have been the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. It's a gallery of rogues in these places. It's just loads of characters. So I started playing maybe 10 or 9 or 10, say, perhaps, and played in Perth for many years. And then latterly, I played in a club in Stirling called the John Spencer Snooker Club. And I used to play with John Higgins, and Stephen Hendry played there, and a lot of big players. So I got to the point where there was maybe a chance of taking it a little further, you know, and more of a, to make more of a living, or at least attempt to get to that sort of stage. And it was a guy that was coaching me from London who was quite elderly, but he passed away, unfortunately. And after that, I didn't put so much into it. So, but in the back of my head, funnily enough, music was always kind of like scratching away, and because that was my background. So it's kind of funny, the drums sort of found me, or, rather than me find, because I always tried to avoid them. I always tried to avoid playing in music and stuff, but the pull was too strong.
I mean, I often wonder, in this conversation of part-time jobs and finding your identity and doing, finding your own path and that stuff. I think there is a correlation to be drawn with musicians to athletes and sports people.
Yeah. I mean, it's the dedication, etc., that you have to put in. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't work on it, then it's a very halfway house kind of thing, and one doesn't exist without the other. My sort of like path to where I am now was definitely, there's a few B roads in there.
When you went to college to study sound engineering, did you meet people? Because I mean, there's quite a few amazing bands in Glasgow now and then and before.
Well, the sound engineering course is actually in Perth, so I did that for like a year. And then I worked in bars and in fact, I worked in Our Price Music during that period. It was 1992 when I did that course, and I stayed in Perth for a further 3 years. And then I thought, do you know what? I don't want to play music. I'd rather be in the music business. So then I saw there was a couple of courses, one in Glasgow and one in Edinburgh. I applied for the one in Edinburgh, didn't get in, but the one in Glasgow seemed a little easier to be accepted. So I applied for that and I got in. So that's 1995. So I thought, this is a week before the college course is meant to start. I haven't even bothered to look for accommodation yet. And I'm like, oh my God, it's in a week. I need to do something. So Perth's about an hour away. So I came through to Glasgow. First flat I saw was one of these places that's been converted, and there's like 8 bedrooms and 1 kitchen, total student flat. So I thought, right, okay, I can afford it. I'll just move in here. Just so happens the person next door in the room next door was Stuart David, who was one of the original members or founders of Belle and Sebastian, who was on a music course with Stuart Murdoch. And they used to come and rehearse and, do stuff in his room next to my room. And a couple of times a drummer didn't turn up for whatever reason. And I must have mentioned that I did stuff with music and drums in the past, very vaguely. I said, oh, do you want to come and play bongos? And then I would just come and sit in now and again. And then we got to know each other. And that's how it started. So anyway, on the music business course in Glasgow in 95, they had their own record label. And that's the guy, good. And the guy, one of the students ended up being our first manager. So anyway, we got friendly, and part of the record label, which was part of the course, was that you invited people to send tapes in. And at the end of the course, you had a release that was very small, but it kind of showed you how you work a record. You send it to press and radio, and it just showed you the mechanics of, what it's like to be a record label. So anyway, at this point, I got friendly with Stuart, the two Stuarts, and he gave me a tape of a couple of songs that he'd recorded prior to that, sort of really rough demos, but it was Dog on Wheels, String Bean Jean, possibly something else. So I handed it in, and the lecturer was Alan Rankin from a band called The Associates, and he was the main guy. So I gave him the tape and we handed it in, and he was blown away by it and said, right, okay, maybe they got 30 tapes, and the whole class had to pick their favorite one, and then ultimately you pick one band, they do a single, etc. So I handed in the Belle and Sebastian tape, got friendly with Neil, who was our first manager, and it kind of went from there. So we didn't even finish the course, because by that point things were beginning to happen. Alan Rankin was sending the tape away and so on. And then at the end of the course, instead of a single, he said, we have a bigger budget this year. Do you want to do an album? And there was only 5 of us in the band at that point. So we rehearsed a bit, not really knowing each other much. And then we went in and we recorded an album in like 5 days. That was Tigermilk. And, it was like none of us knew what we were doing. So we kind of got away with that one.
And 1,000 copies pressed?
That's 1,000 copies pressed. 500 went to press and radio, and the other 500 were just distributed by hand around Scottish record shops.
That is so great. I mean, you must look at that time and think, wow, what a time to walk into that flat. What a time to walk into that building.
Yeah, oh, my word. Oh, honestly, because like 5 minutes either way.
Right.
Because like that's it. And it doesn't happen. And that's basically the music industry. It's a lot of luck involved. And also, at the end of the course year for Stowe College, that was the name of the college, for Electric Honey Records, which was the label that did Tigermilk, we had this industry. You kind of have an end of college party, I suppose. So the studio that we recorded in, we decided we'd do a live gig, and then Alan Rankin invited like 30 publishers and 40 record, like at least a couple of hundred people from the industry came up to see this gig. And the funny thing was, Stuart already had put a deal together with Jeepster Records, and we didn't want advances or anything. We had a load of, like clauses that we wanted to do. He said, we're not going to take any money from you, but we want like full artistic license to do anything we want. You're not allowed to listen to the record until it's fully finished, and all that, all these demands and all these things. And they said, okay, that's fine. So, well, right, okay, we'll sign with you. So all these people from Geffen and you name it come up, and the first thing Stuart says on the mic is, thanks for coming, guys. We've already signed a deal. And it was really funny. And so anyway, what had happened was they got all these white labels and just copies of Tigermilk, and were put on the walls of the studio, and all these guests would come in, and half them were our friends, half of them were people from there. Everybody got hammered. And I remember people throwing copies of them on the roof, like clay pigeon shooting or something, and just throwing them about. And about a year later, they're worth about $1,500. And there might even still be some on the roof of Savannah, the studio. I don't know. It was insane. People were just throwing them around like frisbees. And then we were just laughing. Funny. And we were just like, yeah, that's great. And then, a few years later, you're like, wow, these things are worth a fortune.
So, I mean, did that set the tone of the band?
Totally. Absolutely. It was, we just made it up as we went along. But it was always Stuart's vision. And he always had the insight of, let's not do interviews. Let's just make the music talk. Because at that point, it was peak Britpop and all the rest of it. So basically, it wasn't so much about the music as about the personalities in a lot of ways by that point. And Blur and Oasis fighting and this and that and da-da-da-da. And it was, the music was kind of secondary in a lot of it, in a lot of ways. So Stuart was like, right, let's just go right under the radar and just do the music and a Daft Punk or something, where you just anonymity, absolute anonymity, and it's just the music.
Yeah.
And hopefully that'll build some intrigue, because this is just about when the internet's, kind of kicking in properly, I suppose. I remember the first band photos had none of the band in for at least 2 or 3 years. Just our pals ironing on an ironing board or whatever. It was just really dull photos of just pals. I remember the first photo, I was in the first photo of any band member, I think, and it was me lying under a van in Camden like he'd just been knocked down. That was the first photo. I was like, great.
What of that kind of that mentality have you kept over all these years? Because you're going to grow up as people, your songwriting is going to be changing, your style's going to be evolving.
In some ways, yeah, like we definitely have a siege mentality at times with certain things, but the industry's changed so much as well that you kind of have to change with it also, as well as personally with your with personal lives and so on and so forth. But yeah, we have a studio in Glasgow now, which is great, and we still have a bit of that mentality that we had originally. Although, as time goes on, you have to, you have to loosen it up a little bit because the industry's changed, and you realize that there's just different priorities and different things that are going on now.
The video for Our Necessary Drama is maybe, the concept doing a video. I feel pain for bands who have to make videos.
Yes. This time round, I can't remember what had gone on, but we had different concepts and different directors getting in touch and so on and so forth. And for whatever reason, it kind of got to the 11th hour and nothing was decided, and we hadn't come up with anything solid for an idea. And then it was just the last minute thing, and that video sort of, came together. But, we've always kind of tried to embrace the people that are into the band and whatnot, even going back to like the mid 90s where, we embraced the internet and, we had all these chat rooms and different things, and people really got into that before most bands even thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously we did the Bowley in 99, which was it was like the physical version of that, if you like, because all the bands and all the people going there, bought ticket buyers, the fans and all the rest of it, all hung out together. And moving on from that, from the Boaty from, a few years ago, is the same thing. So everybody's under one roof, and there's, there's not them and us and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Does that mean that there's always an element of, look, what we've done right now is great. With the lessons that we've learned has got us up to this point. Let's continue to learn so we can do the next thing, because everything else is always going to be evolving. It's clear how much the record industry has changed. Sharing half of your first album with press, is it always learning, always looking to see what's next and being open to ideas? Because I can totally empathize with bands who are like, no, this is us, we don't change.
No, we're constantly looking at different new ways to do things, how the industry is, what the best way forward, if it's for us or not, but at least looking at it. And all the different platforms that are now available, what's the most successful, how do you build up a following on a different platform, for instance, different territories in the world, how, what's going on there, America especially, because that's the biggest market, I guess, for a lot of bands. So we're constantly looking at how things have changed, because you can't just wear one hat anymore. You've got to be able to do a lot of different things. It's not like where before you just made a record and you played a few gigs and that was it. It doesn't, those days are kind of gone. You can't do that anymore. So I think it helps in a lot of ways. You understand what you're doing a bit better. The music, I think, becomes more interesting because, for instance, like we want to have a music like like library music. So just doing instrumentals a lot of the time. Different ways you can work with publishers, where your music's going to go, where you want it to be seen and heard, and so on and so forth. So a lot of that stuff's fantastic. And we were meant to go to LA to do our latest album 2 years ago or whenever it was, to work with a guy called Sean Everett, who's a really amazing big producer now. And obviously COVID kicked in, couldn't do it. So then we upgraded our studio in Glasgow, which was like a rehearsal room, but we could maybe do demos in it up to a certain degree. So then we piled a load of money in and just, let's make this an absolute working studio, which it is now. And that was it. So it's good. Now we have a home base where everybody can just be there every day. I wouldn't say it was straightforward, but there was, it was done bit by bit because obviously we all had a bit of time because COVID had kicked in. So we did a load of instrumentals before we kind of properly upgraded the studio. We must have done 30 or 40 instrumentals, all different kinds, which are in the library, if you will. And then we just wrote a whole load of new songs for the album. We thought we were going to go back to the instrumentals and thought, let's can't be bothered. It's like, that's yesterday. Let's do some more, I
imagine having your own studio can encourage that and be like, we've done that.
Well, yeah, and I like the idea of somebody has an idea in the morning and you go, right, okay, let's jump on that. You've got till 4 o'clock, and when that's done, it goes in the library.
The 10th album thing, is that a thing? Is that a thing with the group?
No. It's funny. We never really look back the way, to be honest with you. We're always looking ahead to see what's next. And And you know, the good thing is, Stuart was the first 2 albums. Stuart did all the songs. He wrote all the songs. It was, you know, and then the 3rd album, Arab Strap, Stevie came in, you know, more songwriters, and now everybody's writing songs. Everybody's like contributing, whether it's instrumental or part of the lyrics and stuff. So it's actually evolved so much since then in the way we write songs and who writes them, that makes things different and interesting. So because we all have different musical backgrounds and different musical tastes, there's lots of stuff that crosses over, but there's also stuff that doesn't, which is great, which means that it makes it quite eclectic. So you know, and we're not scared to use technology and go with whatever's new as well, because that's also quite exciting, and that changes things up as well. UK tour is going to happen in November, and the European tour that was due to happen in April will now I think it's January, and we're due to go to the States in June, late May, and then most of June.
UK tour in November, including 2 nights at the Roundhouse.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking about how the group's evolved, you know, when you're playing together live, you know, when it comes into the live arena, the way that songs change after a record's been made, where's the feeling on that?
Yeah, well, that's another thing as well. You know, some of the songs, the way they've been recorded, trying to emulate them live is quite interesting. We're now at that stage where we're beginning to rehearse whichever songs, you know, we're going to play live. But the thing was, the UK tour would have happened way before the album came out as the European tour as well. So we probably would have only showcased a couple of songs. But now we're going to the States in June. The record will have been out for a month at least. So now we can incorporate more of the songs because people have heard them. So now we can maybe have 5 or 6 or 4 new ones rather than just 2, because you don't want to have too many new songs that people don't know, because that's when the bar gets busy. And the venue's like, oh God, another new song, right? Okay, let's get some drinks.
Richard, thank you so much for being up.
Oh, thank you.
When you're rehearsing in the next few weeks, is that a pretty rigorous schedule?
It's not too bad actually, because we, you know, most of us have families and stuff, so we have to, you know, we work around those types of schedules, and there's still a few bits and bobs of things going on to do with the album prior to it coming out, and we still have the promos beginning to kind of ramp up a bit, so there's quite a lot of that to do as well, and a few different sessions for things. So we're working out logistics of all that kind of stuff, but we're, you know, a lot of that stuff we can record in Glasgow, which is good. But there's when the promotional machine kicks in, that's it. You know, you've got to sort of adhere to it. So that's the next stuff.
You got to hold on and ride it.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see you at the Roundhouse. I'm so excited.
Oh, great. Yeah, no, that'll be, I'm looking forward to it, actually. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's been so long.
So there was Richard Colburn on 101 Part-Time Jobs. If you haven't already, go and pick up your tickets to see them on tour later this year and pre-order a bit of Previous out on the 6th of May. Cheers for listening. Here's Sparrer.
I've been working all day for me mate on the side, running around like a blue-ass fly. I've been working all day for me mate. Every bleeding minute I've been on the go, up and down the ladder like a fiddler's elbow. I've been working all day for me mate.
This is a Mighty Moon Media podcast.